quite complementary. There's many precedents for doing this throughout the globe, and I think in many other significant global financial markets, fair access to clearing has been viewed as essential, whether in the context of approving or rejecting consolidation transactions on a in-country or cross-border basis. Fair access to clearing facilities has been viewed as the essential issue. In Australia, a very successful pathway and framework for the introduction of competition was introduced, where government involvement effectively allowed access to the clearing facilities owned by the monopoly exchange and allowed for the successful introduction of competition in late 2011. I think it's too hard to draw too many conclusions from the Australian example, given that competition has really only occurred there for a few months in true reality. But it is clear that without the involvement of regulators and policymakers regarding the issue of clearing, competition would not have come to that market. So, what do we think that this means in terms of specific action that should be taken? Well, I think it's clear what our views are with respect to the need for regulatory involvement to facilitate competition, so I won't belabor that too much, except to reemphasize that in doing so, it will reduce the implementation costs for all market participants and bring the benefits of that competition to the market earlier. From our perspective, with respect to fair access to CBLC, we should believe it should be mandated no later than January of 2014. This would allow the incumbent, BVM Bovespa, to complete the integration of their clearinghouses as they had previously articulated, and would at the same time provide ample time for the CVM and market participants to adequately prepare for competition with respect to the other issues that it would pose to the marketplace. But to be clear, the mandate that that integration and that access happen should be given as quickly as possible. The integration and the fair access of multiple exchanges to a common CCP and CSD is not without its own risks. And cooperation between future competitors can be difficult, if not facilitated. And so by laying out that mandate and starting that cooperation and the inevitability of that fair access as early as possible, it will help to minimize those risks and the cost associated with it. At the same time, other implementation efforts should begin in parallel and start with principles that can be consistently applied with an active dialogue promoted on a continuous basis amongst all market participants, so all perspectives can be heard and reflected in the process. Now, with respect to those principles, from our perspective, I think we should avoid approaches that are monolithic. The Oxera report notes this, and it is said in their remarks earlier today, that just as the Brazilian market is unique, every participant within that market is unique. And the costs and the proper approach for each broker will vary based on their own size, their business model, their customers' needs, and their vision for the future generally. I think one thing the Oxera report didn't speak about is the wave of competition amongst vendors and non-exchange infrastructure services providers that will be unleashed once it is clear that competition is coming to the market. We believe there will be a large variety of low-cost options that will be made available to brokers and other market participants to help facilitate this transition, again, once it's clearly known that this transition is going to happen and is sanctioned by the regulator. Brokers could, at the same time, choose to develop proprietary solutions as they see fit if they believe it will be in their interest, their customers' interest, and consistent with their long-term business models. I think, again, I want to speak a little bit to our notion of what are the utility functions, right? There are certain aspects of market structure that we do not believe competition would be beneficial. Now, while at the same time, again, re-emphasizing DirectEdge's intent to fulfill any obligations required of it under 461 or other Brazilian law, there are some aspects of current market structure that we believe would be best served to be offered on either a consolidated or at a minimum a synchronized basis. We believe there should be a common loss recovery mechanism, or MRP, and other similar market-wide mechanisms. We believe there should be common tick sizes, hours of operation, auction functionality to control against extreme market or single stock volatility. And I think if those principles are done on a sound basis, it will ease many of some of the transition concerns that market participants will have at the outset of this transition process. Moreover, I think it should be recognized that exchanges can play an important role in helping brokers make that transition. We'll talk about this a little bit in a moment with respect to our intentions to introduce routing functionality to Brazil in the exchange market, but also recognize that within a consistent market structure, there will be a variety of approaches each individual can take to adapting to competition, and they should be allowed to utilize them in a way consistent with them and their business model within the framework of the principles set out to ensure appropriate transition for the market as a whole. In doing so, I think it will go a long way to not only managing costs, but easing fears about costs at the outset, especially, again, if this guidance is given early. Ultimately, we believe that a broker's business model will determine the right level of investment in facilitating the transition to exchange competition. Again, we believe that one of the biggest benefits of competition amongst exchanges is it will allow brokers to differentiate. Rather than simply being the provider of a commodity service, a connection to an exchange, they can layer on a variety of other value-added propositions to their customers, and how they choose to do that will allow them to compete more effectively with one another and deliver new levels of value to their end customers. And so market participants don't need protection from competition or the potential costs that may be accompanied by it. They need clarity that that competition is coming, so they can be empowered to make decisions that are right for them and for their other stakeholders as quickly and as accurately as possible at the outset. Like I said, vendors will help in that process for brokers that have decided not to pursue implementations on a proprietary basis. Many brokers already utilize these existing platforms, and either modifications to those platforms will be made available to them, in our opinion, at very low to no cost to facilitate access at the user level, and a variety of network providers that already exist and already have pre-existing networks in Brazil will provide very managed solutions from a connectivity perspective to ensure that if you choose to be connected directly to all exchanges, you have efficient ways to do so, that you do not need to build from nothing, and you do not need to manage independently. Again, I think the exchanges can help in this process, and DirectEdge effectively is positioning its strategy to be able to do so. Our introduction of smart order routing amongst exchanges in the United States, where we're a real leader, is a principle that we hope to bring to Brazil, where in effecting transactions on our platform, if the best price could be achieved on a competing exchange and not on our own, we would route that order onto the competing exchange through a variety of potential mechanisms to ensure best execution, and doing this at no incremental cost, not requiring that cost be borne by the broker, either with respect to explicit fees or implicit management costs. So through the variety of these mechanisms, especially when certainty is given early about the pending arrival of competition, they can be minimized, and they can be minimized at the choice of the individual broker or market participant in a way that best suits them. I think with respect to other market structure considerations, again, synchronization is important. There are several aspects of market structure rules that should not be the subject of competition. I think we've already spoken of those. With respect to establishing certain seminal prices in the market, and particularly the opening and the closing prices for securities, again, the primacy of the listing market should be respected. I think with respect to best execution, again, guidance should be given as quickly as possible about how those standards would evolve in a multi-exchange environment. Again, I think these rules should be principles-based. They should, wherever possible, allow for transition periods so that brokers can assess the relative strengths and weaknesses of competitors in making their own individual determinations. And again, there will need to be, in our view, some guidance given to exchanges in that regard, in terms of the respecting of competitor prices, trade-through rules, and the like. And moreover, that will also help us properly deal at the outset with instances of exchange technology failures. whether you've seen examples in the United States or what's happened in this market earlier this week. There will be times when exchanges have technology difficulties, and what competing exchanges can and cannot do in those circumstances will be important to be known early to assure stable markets that are viewed by all investors as being of the highest integrity. I think with respect to market data, mechanisms of which there could be several potential to ensure adequate price and quote transparency as early as possible, whether through a neutral industry utility, leveraging the existing exchange utilities for market data distribution, or allowing distribution of consolidated market-wide data through multiple vendors. Those mechanisms should be set up as early as possible and facilitated as early as possible so that investors feel like they always have easy access to a market-wide view of the best prices for any security at any one point in time. That is not to mean that individual exchanges should be restricted from the ability to disseminate their data independently, but they should also at the same time accept the responsibility to do so within a common framework as well. So with respect to market supervision and integrity, we believe that the primary role should continue to be reside with the BSM. Again, that would not, in our view, dilute or otherwise diminish the responsibility that any individual exchange would have with respect to compliance within its own market. And if this was not the ultimate approach that was pursued, DirectEdge would gladly and more than adequately fulfill its responsibilities independently. But we believe a single regulator is good both economically and good for investor protection, maintaining strong oversight while reducing the potential for duplicative costs or conflicts of interest. So, before I yield the floor, I'm really proud to be here, and I'm really honored to be here. Brazil is clearly ready for competition, and the benefits of it are within reach. This has been validated by Oxera, but without offense to Oxera's report, more importantly to me, it's been validated by the time that DirectEdge has spent in pursuing this project over the last 2.5 years. And we stand ready to contribute to that progress in a respectful and responsible manner. We think making a definitive statement on access to the existing CCP and CSD and a statement generally that competition is coming to the market, if that is the ultimate choice of policymakers and regulators, is essential as early as possible to make that transition to competition as effective as possible. The timing can still allow for parties to achieve their other business objectives, which we also believe are in the interest of Brazil. But cooperation at the outset will help avoid any transition risks. Having an approach like this that's optimized will really help produce the optimal result by making those intentions known and early, by announcing sound principles that control costs, protect markets, and respect the individual aspects of each broker and their liberty to pursue how to achieve a post-competition business model will provide the flexibility and the certainty that will ease any anxiety that you may hear today over transition. So we believe that if exchange competition is brought to Brazil and done properly, it will not only preserve the Brazilian market, but it will improve Brazil as well. I thank you for the opportunity to present. I look forward to the debate and any questions you may have.